Hi, it's Ileana. So I was recently notified that there's videos out on the terraformation of Mars by 2035 where they're building domes and biodomes as livable habitats and also for gardening, for food, and how they're planning to create an atmosphere by sending nuclear fusion rockets, detonating them above Mars to create two nuclear suns to melt the polar ice caps on Mars, starting to create more oxygen, mixing in with the hydrogen to create rain, to bring in algae, to start growing algae farms, to start growing experimental forests, living habitats, plant life. They're showing step by step how this will be done, starting in 2030s, 2035. The most interesting thing about this plan is that they're using domes and biodomes to create dome structures, habitable structures in craters on the surface of Mars, and also underground biodome systems in caverns. When the pole systems on Mars start melting and the ice also melts, it will create lakes and then oceans covering 20% of the landmass in water on Mars. When the atmosphere is thickened, that's what's projected in the video. 20% of the landmass on the planet will become lakes and oceans with water supply and supplies. And they'll create these magnetic field lines on the surface with these cable systems that's supposed to recreate the magnetic sphere on Mars. It's supposed to bring back the magnetosphere surrounding the planet itself. The electromagnetic energy will come back to the planet and it will stabilize its orbit again and give it back a magnetic field through these electromagnetic lines being run through these long cable systems. That concept is very interesting. I've been talking about this since 2016, how this has already been done on Mars through the secret space programs, that they've built domes, and inside those domes there's bases. The domes protect the bases. So this infrastructure already exists on Mars. They're saying they're going to do this by 2035, 2030, aerospace industries to develop this. And the other video talks about designing crystal engine systems, and that piezoelectric frequency of the crystals, once you develop it into an engine system, it powers the craft so that it only takes about several days to get to Mars. And that Neurolink technologies will be used as connector systems to remotely pilot crafts to get to Mars. Again, I've been talking about these types of systems since 2017, about crystalline engines, about Neurolink neuronal systems. They said Neurolink neuronal systems that can be connected to spaceships to remotely pilot them, to test out different types of crafts. I've been talking about that since 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 for the longest time. And these videos came out about 3 months apart, 3 months ago. And this is 2023. And they're saying these types of crafts will start to be developed by 2040, 2050, 2060, and onwards. So it's quite interesting that these videos were made. Now they're talking about things being projected in the future of creating this technology, but this technology already exists now in the space programs, off-world space programs, secret space programs on the moon and Mars. They're also talking about having the gateway space stations with large spaceships docking there for the aerospace industry, and people being able to travel in their own spacecrafts. That was another part of the video. I find these topics very interesting because I've been disclosing that these kinds of things already exist in the secret space programs. So the fact that somebody clued in that these things are possibilities to do and soon, I don't think that's a coincidence. They even talk about curing cancer, reversing the aging process, and having things like medical pods that can prevent you from aging. Yes, they mentioned that too as possibilities. So those two videos, to me, those are concepts that already exist on Mars that I had encounters with because I was in a 60 and back on Mars. So the fact that people are making videos about this, that these things will be in the future, in the near future, I don't think that's a coincidence. Again, to me, these things already exist. So I'm going to share the videos so anybody can listen to them and just see how that stuff is done, what the plans are, and how it somehow works. Because the videos show how these things would be done. So I found them educational and interesting. Talks about torpor as well, how you can slow down the aging process. It's very interesting. I am very familiar with these concepts because I encountered those concepts on Mars. The crystalline engine systems, planetary corporations was already doing that in their aerospace labs. They had that developed. Medical pods, holographic medical pods, they have that. They have domed bases. They have underground biodome bases, and on the surface of Mars, they also talked about smart suits that can help you to walk on the surface of Mars, and it regulates your airflow, gives you oxygen and other things. That was also in the videos. Yep, smart suits exist on Mars. They do. I wore a smart suit, and it regulated all my health functions and other bodily systems. They have that developed. So these are not new concepts. None of this is new. Neurolink, neuronal web systems that can pilot remotely the spacecraft. I was the first to talk about that. Now it's in these videos. We're definitely reaching a disclosure point because these things already exist. And to folks that say, oh no, it's not true, it was all made up, that doesn't exist on Mars, it's impossible. It's very much possible, and it's very much doable, and it has been done for about 75 years. And eventually, it's going to be disclosed. These videos are just precursors to what could be done, but it's already been done. So it's not that huge of a secret with time travel and being able to beam out somebody from their home and teleport them to another planet, you don't even need spaceships. You have teleportation, mini portal systems that can do that. They use bismuth type coils on the transportation pads, on the transportation panels, and it's mini portal tech that can literally portal you from one portion of space from your bedroom. It could track your energy field signature by your biofield signature. It could lock onto your biofield signature and beam you out from your bed. And you end up on a transportation pad on Mars. They don't need spaceships to abduct you anymore. They can just beam you out into these Black Ops secret space programs on the facilities on Mars, the moon, and other places. That's real. It exists. But these videos are really good examples of what the humans are planning. But the humans, the breakaway civilizations, have already done this. So it's not what's being planned, it's already what's been done, but it's being shown to us as what could be possibilities by 2035. It's not too far away, but this has been done already. The US had bases on the moon, and I mean the US Navy, military, they had bases on the moon by the late 1950s, 1960s, bases on Mars by 1980s. This is not make-believe stuff. This is reality that's been hidden from us. Yes, I've heard it. The SSP isn't real. Those experiencers aren't telling the truth. They've been brainwashed. They've been manipulated. They've been used. Yes, secret space programs do that. And they then, what do? They mind wipe the memories of these experiences and technologies from people's brains so you don't remember how any of that works, and you cannot replicate it at all on Earth. None of that tech. Because it's proprietary and it's on the moon and Mars. So nobody has any evidence of it because their brains have been wiped of the schematics of the tech. You can't replicate it, remake it because you don't remember how, but you have vague pieces of memories of what you experienced and what you operated functionality-wise and how you lived off-world. You have memories. And then you try to put the puzzle pieces together. It's not a joke. That stuff is real. And to the naysayers, I say, well, you didn't have that experience. You weren't there. How would you know? Can you prove it or disprove it that it's not real? You can't. When the secrets are out, they'll be out. But these videos, they're sort of interesting bits and points that, again, I have been discussing for a very long time, and until now I could never even find comparables to anything like it. And this just came out 3 months ago. I asked myself why. Are people just getting to be such good futurists that they're conceptualizing these types of technologies and what our future holds? Or has this already been done on the moon and Mars, and they're sort of getting us ready, prepped with these kinds of futuristic videos of what the future will be like 10 years from now, 20, 30 years from now. What will the future be like? Well, that's already the current present on Mars and the moon. It's not our future, it's the current present. We on Earth just don't have access to that advanced technology in the present on the moon and Mars. But it's there. It's called Hidden for a Reason. And it's not so much hidden anymore. These videos, I think, are worth watching to put some of the puzzle pieces even more together of what all of this adds up to.
40 starships begin firing nuclear missiles towards the poles of Mars. The fireworks show has begun.
An entire nation dedicated to a common goal, to turn a lifeless rock into a garden.
The missiles take turns, exploding far above the surface in the Martian atmosphere. 2 pulsing suns are created in the skies above the north and south poles of Mars. And so begins the terraforming of Mars. The cold, radioactive, and sterile desert surface is being rehabilitated into its former green self. The temperature is rising, the ice is melting, and the atmosphere thickening, kickstarting a cascading greenhouse effect. Mars is being rebooted. What will grow, and what kinds of creatures will make the planet their home? When will humans take over and launch long-term terraforming missions, such as the building of a magnetosphere and oxygenating and seeding the planet? Or will time start to run out as younger generations become used to living underground in domed settlements, losing their connection to Earth and having no desire to continue the multi-generational terraforming project? The nuclear explosions, the 2 suns, are shining brightly above the poles. This is phase 1 of terraforming Mars. It is the mass extraction of CO2 ice. Mars is so cold because the atmosphere is only 1% of Earth's. It is not enough to capture the heat coming in from the sun. Any liquid water on the surface quickly freezes or evaporates. The low pressure also pulls out all of the oxygen from a human's blood, causing circulatory shutdown within a minute, requiring pressurized suits to survive. The 2 nuclear suns start melting the ice caps. As the CO2 and water in the ice caps melt and turn into gases, it is released into the air, creating a thicker atmosphere. The red planet's temperature begins to rise. Averages go from -60 Celsius, -76 Fahrenheit, to -40. Terraforming is first seen in the warmest regions near the equator, and in the deepest craters and valleys. Liquid water starts appearing on the surface, but freezes at night. As the surface becomes warmer and more CO2 and water melts, thickening the atmosphere, it begins trapping more heat, which melts more CO2 and water, speeding up the terraforming mission. And so it begins, the runaway greenhouse effect. Mars begins to take over, like an advanced artificial intelligence, able to start programming a stronger version of itself. As temperatures in more regions begin to reach 0 Celsius, 32 Fahrenheit, underground ice begins to melt. Liquid water is seeping out of the soil and hills, flowing down carved-out ancient riverbeds and into prehistoric lake craters. As water vapor evaporates into the atmosphere, more clouds begin to form. It is cold at first, with snow and hail, then it begins to rain, starting the water cycle. The red dust covering Mars starts to be washed away. Rivers are flowing, moving slowly because of the lower gravity. Most of Mars starts to get covered with 30 feet, 9 meters of water, recreating the first oceans. 87% of the ancient oceans on Mars have been lost to space. What survived was stored in the polar ice caps. But now, the oceans are returning. When fully terraformed, Mars will have an ocean a mile, 1.6 kilometers deep, covering more than 20% of the planet, with slow-moving monster waves. There will be one giant ocean in the northern hemisphere where it is flat and below average elevation, while in the south, filled with craters and high elevation, there will be dry land. As the atmosphere gets thicker, it begins to block more radiation, solar radiation and cosmic rays that have been sterilizing the surface. The sky is now starting to turn into a light shade of blue. Water is seeping through cracks going deep underground. Any subterranean, ancient Martian bacteria that has survived underground will start growing and spreading. The bacteria starts rising to the surface, where the growing pools of water, thickening atmosphere, and sunlight helps it grow and spread. Bacteria can survive in the vacuum of space and in radiation. Some can even survive for millions of years. If there is no ancient Martian bacteria, then it will be seeded from Earth. These bacteria will be bioengineered, designed to survive in cold, high-radiation environments and made to grow and spread fast. Once they have established themselves on the planet, they will rapidly adapt and evolve to the local environments, going through 500 generations in a single year. The bacteria will begin to break up rocks, creating soil, paving the way for more complex organisms and plants to survive, from algae, grasses, and moss. Mars is now partially terraformed. Oxygen masks are still needed, but in the lower areas of the southern plains, humans will not need pressure suits. Structures don't need to be built as strong to withstand the pressure, and radiation from space is reduced, so habitats do not need to be buried deep underground. Now begins the multi-generation long projects to terraform Mars completely. The successful development of nuclear fusion on Earth begins to shorten the terraforming timeline. The crater. Rather than terraforming the whole planet, work starts on terraforming a specific location, a deep crater. This is the para-terraforming mission. An entire crater is covered and enclosed. It becomes a transparent dome, turning it into an open, semi-underground Earth. Construction continues on the deep crater floor, where it is shielded from radiation, warm at around 20 Celsius, 68 Fahrenheit, and has a high pressure, allowing for liquid water and not needing pressure suits or pressurized habitats. Crews can only live on the surface for a short amount of time, even in their spaceships, as they are bombarded by solar and cosmic rays which split the nuclei of the atoms in the metal of the spacecraft. This is why humans need to go deep within Mars. Living in the enclosed crater, the climate is controlled, and the atmosphere is geoengineered to be breathable. The red soil is mixed with a glue made out of plants and is baked to make bricks and a 3D printing material. There are open areas for farming plants in the native Martian soil. A bioreactor machine mixes water to clean the soil of the harmful perchlorate, making it ready to use for farming. Liquid water evaporates into the atmosphere of the dome, creating rain. Tunnel diggers are digging into the sides of the crater to create more enclosed, oxygenated habitats. Tunnels will soon connect the crater habitats to more craters, lava tubes, launch pads, and other areas of Mars, creating a subterranean network. Terraforming the entire planet of Mars continues. With its thicker atmosphere, warm climate, flowing rivers and ocean waves, and growing bacteria. Genetically engineering humans advances on Earth, and humanity cures cancer, allowing astronauts to start living in habitats on the surface of Mars with no fear of radiation. Asteroids and comets are redirected, targeting the deserts on Mars. Because there is not enough CO2 on Mars to fully transform the atmosphere, a company is paid to import additional materials to make the atmosphere thicker. Ice and nitrogen asteroids are also harvested for the atmosphere, used to make the soil habitable for growing native plants. Planetary fusion reactors now dot the Martian landscape. Superconducting cables wrap around Mars from north to south and around the equator, passing through the Mariner Valley, just like the primitive undersea internet cables on Earth. An electrical current begins to pulsate and encircle Mars. This is the Solenoid Loop project, built to reboot Mars's magnetic field. Without a natural magnetic field, 100 grams to 2 kilograms of atmosphere needs to be manufactured by settlers every second, as solar winds strip the unprotected atmosphere away into space. Mars had a magnetic field before, but massive asteroids smashing into the surface possibly disrupted the heat flow in the core of the planet, and it began to shut down. So it needs to be rebooted. The cables on the surface wrap around Mars's magnetic inner core. As the nuclear fusion reactors turn on, sending electrical currents through the cables, it begins to create a magnetic field, surrounding the planet and reaching out into space. It starts blocking solar and cosmic radiation and protects the atmosphere from being stripped away into space. As the magnetosphere grows and strengthens, the green glows of auroras begin dancing over the north and south poles of Mars. Now protected by the engineered magnetic field, the atmosphere on Mars starts reaching the final stages of being complete. More nitrogen asteroids are harvested for the atmosphere. It is being re-engineered to lower the carbon dioxide, making the surface habitable for more complex microorganisms, plants, animals, and humans. Tardigrades are the pioneering species on Mars, nature's greatest survivors. They are feeding on bacteria and algae, soaking up carbon dioxide, radiation, heavy metals, and dust, and providing food for larger creatures. Human-made oxygen towers and mass algae farms speed up the process of turning more CO2 into oxygen, as carbon dioxide is made up of 73% oxygen. Genetically engineered plants and trees are being introduced onto the wild surface of Mars. This is the seeding stage of Project Terra. Advanced bioengineered flowering species and insects are seeded. And as more complex organisms are introduced, with selective breeding, the soil and surface becomes more enriched, building the foundation for a more complex biological world to thrive. We do not know where our future technology will lead us, or how human bodies could be bioengineered to survive on Mars, in the end, giving humanity control of its own evolution.
We are building a railroad to space. Let's take a journey into the future and explore how humanity will travel through the cosmos.
Kinetic launchers are operational. Spin launch throws small uncrewed spacecraft into low Earth orbit without the use of rocket fuel. Electric ion engines, creating thrust by electrically charging a gas, become more powerful and are used to power the Lunar Gateway space station. Humanity watches as larger and larger space structures are built. Rockets launch, deploying expandable and inflatable payloads. An entire space station is sent into space in a single launch. The International Space Station deorbits, burning up in Earth's atmosphere and crashing into the ocean. SpaceX begins launching the basic building blocks of their orbiting fuel station. The age of orbital refueling advances. The depot cryogenically stores fuel and will soon store mechanical spare parts for spacecraft, allowing space vehicles to be maintained and repaired in Earth's orbit, never needing to land. This starts dividing spacecraft into two types, those that are designed to launch and land on Earth, with added heat shields, fuel storage, air brakes, and parachutes, and those that are designed just for the vacuum of space. The building of SpaceX's fuel station also tests the working prototypes of the Starship Mark II, twice the diameter, with 4 times the amount of internal space than the first-generation Starship, large enough to be a space station itself. The Artemis moon base refuels a spacecraft. They are testing the first rocket fuel made on the moon. The first small-scaled nuclear fusion-powered spacecraft begins testing, producing energy without nuclear waste. Fuel is in the form of hydrogen isotopes. Hydrogen is present in the atmosphere of many planets and on asteroids. To create nuclear fusion, an environment like the center of the Sun is needed, with extremely high temperatures and pressure. It is the gravitational forces of the Sun that squeezes the hydrogen together in the center, creating nuclear fusion. On a spacecraft, the fuel is heated into a plasma, then squeezed, using either magnetic confinement in the form of large electromagnets or by inertial confinement, using lasers and pistons to push and compress the fuel. A few kilograms of fuel could power the average home on Earth for about 9 years. And for a spacecraft, fusion power will cut future travel times in half, while an advanced ultra-high energy fusion engine will propel a spacecraft to Mars and back in 45 to 75 days. 2035. This year will be known as the first Great Crossing. The journey to Mars is shortened by months, down to 80 days, because Earth and Mars are closer than normal. This is known as a perihelic opposition. A number of starships, a colonial fleet, and armada are waiting in parking orbit around Earth, ready to set off when the launch window opens, making Elon Musk the first space admiral. The Starshot Alpha Centauri program launches a swarm of 1,000 tiny spacecraft to collect data. Using solar sails, they are powered by lasers on Earth. Other solar sail spacecraft are powered with just the sun's light alone. People on Earth wonder when will they see the first human space sailors and even space pirates. The first crewed mission lands on the Martian moon Phobos. Humanity's in-space manufacturing abilities begins to mature. Massive beams are printed and knitted together by a Redwire Archinaut spacecraft, allowing for structures to be built like spiders, larger than any rockets can carry into space. People on Earth are shown concept art of massive space structures, showing multi-kilometer trusses, skeletons of spacecraft, New Age telescopes, and space station worlds. Humanity starts to daydream of limitless-sized space structures.
An announcement is made on Earth, stating that humanity has officially become a multiplanetary species.
Orbital mechanics is being taught in middle schools, along with space law. A space creole, a language, is already developing. Words combined from languages on Earth are being used to describe the new and alien sensations of living in space. AI engineers have trained the first AI capable of managing solo an entire spacecraft. It is able to carry out missions autonomously, setting its own goals, objectives, and is able to create new missions of its own. There is a heightened need for asteroid defenses, as humans now have 3 settlements on Earth, Lunar, and Mars. Tests are conducted on implanting thrusters onto asteroids as a way of redirecting them. Another test mission has the name Gravity Tractor 1. A large spacecraft is deployed, flying alongside a small asteroid. Without touching, the small gravitational pull of the spacecraft is enough to make a micro-adjustment to the path of the asteroid. The construction of the largest rotating spaceport begins, creating what some people are calling a garden in space. The wheel-like structure with a rotating outer ring creating artificial gravity is able to house 450 people, including scientists and tourists. (2051), the second Great Crossing. 200 starships launch from Earth's orbit, and thousands of people land on the Red Planet. Jupiter's moon, Ganymede, becomes a target for crewed exploration. On Earth, humans are able to do weekly commutes, taking shuttles to space stations where they work and returning home for the weekends. There are even public shuttles that have daily timetables. The first lunar space race takes place, named the Slingshot. Spacecraft set off in orbit around Earth, racing around the moon and back again. Others are watching from their own spacecraft. Space adventurers begin flights in solo one-person spacecrafts. All critical flight and support systems are managed by an onboard AI. The AI communicates and is authorized to fly by Earth's AI space flight control. Some of these space adventurers work on building their own DIY versions using an open-source AI piloting system. They are called Do-It-Yourself Autonomous Spacecrafts, or DAs. Mad scientist studies are being done on whether it could be possible to manufacture a spacecraft made primarily out of biological components, chitin, cellulose, or bone. These spacecraft get the name bioships. Meanwhile, a network of quantum computers brings into existence artificial general intelligence. Soon, this super AI will be sent in spacecrafts and beamed across interstellar space as data. When this happens, there will be planetary bodies that are inhabited by only artificial intelligence. The first person is put into sleep mode. Their body is brought down to a lower temperature, between 32 and 34 degrees Celsius or 89 to 93 degrees Fahrenheit. In a state of deep slumber, the heart rate is reduced and metabolism slows down to a near halt. Oxygen needs decrease, and even aging is slowed down. Calculations show that even for a small crew of 4 to 6, the habitat mass, aka the supplies, equipment, and living spaces needed, is reduced by 70 to 90%. This hibernation of sorts is made possible by advances in torpor inducement, a technique for replicating mammalian hibernation. When entering the pod, an astronaut won't feel any coldness. The temperature slowly changes, and they are injected with compounds to induce the state of torpor. The goal is to have deep space spacecraft with chambers filled with these torpor-inducing transfer containers, called hypersleep pods. A crewed mission lands on an asteroid. They test optical mining. Large reflectors concentrate sunlight, excavating and extracting resources, while enclosed in a containment bag. Ion thrusters are fixed onto the asteroid. It is now under human control and put into orbit around Mars for larger-scale mining. A test spacecraft uses a stack of crystals, piezoelectric crystals, as fuel. These crystals are normally used on Earth for sonar. An electric field causes them to have tiny changes to their resting masses, making them a little lighter and a little heavier, generating momentum. This type of propulsion does not require any propellant, which allows for interstellar travel. A few milligrams of antimatter are used to propel a spacecraft all the way to Mars. About 10 billion times the energy is produced compared to traditional chemical combustion rockets. The antimatter particles are created on Earth from ultra-high-speed collisions made at huge particle accelerators, such as the newly built Ultra-Large Hadron Collider. It is also found in bananas. The interstellar ramjet is an advancement of the nuclear fusion engine. Instead of feeding from the spaceship's onboard fuel, it harvests and burns hydrogen floating in space. An electrically generated magnetic field at the front of the spacecraft acts as an invisible scoop, a funnel, that collects the hydrogen floating in space. Accelerated into the ship's engine, it reaches temperatures high enough for fusion. Travel routes are mapped based on the presence of rich interstellar hydrogen. Interstellar space can be rich in gas, especially around star formation regions and young stars. In images of the Horse Nebula, a cloud of ionized hydrogen glows red in the background, while supercooled hydrogen is seen in the dark molecular cloud in the front, part of the famous horse's head. A ramjet can reach the center of the Milky Way in 21 years of ship time, which is 45 years on Earth, because of the relativistic effects. Humans have mastered the taking over of asteroids, landing their spacecraft and implanting thrusters to maneuver them, laying the foundation for the next phase of asteroid manipulation. Plans for the intra-asteroid space station show a habitat burrowed 100 meters deep inside of a mined, hollowed-out, rotating asteroid. After an asteroid has been mined, the shell can then be used as a structure, acting as an ecological shell protecting its inhabitants from radiation. Gravity is provided from either the asteroid's natural rotation or implanted thrusters provide and maintain the spin while also directing the path of the asteroid. Dyson trees are planted. These are genetically modified plants engineered to grow inside of a hollowed-out asteroid. Designed for oxygen production, they help create a small and contained human habitat and ecology inside of an asteroid. A space station is placed around Jupiter's moon, Ganymede. It is the largest moon in the solar system, with its own magnetic field and subterranean ocean. It becomes humanity's deepest deep space crewed outpost. A Neurolink brain chip merges with a spacecraft, creating a neuronal ship. Testing of the first Alcubierre warp engine goes live, reducing travel times from years to hours. A warp drive expands the space behind the spacecraft and squeezes the space in front, creating a bubble. The spacecraft is surfing over the fabric of space-time. It is much like a human standing in a swimming pool, pushing the water behind so that the water in front and even the leaves floating on the water moves towards them. There are no relativistic effects with a warp engine. Missions are achieved in just a few years, coming back to Earth where both the crew on the ship and people on Earth age at the same rate. Replicants are being sent to other planets. These self-replicating microbots are programmed for terraforming, slowly converting a planet's atmosphere. They use the resources on the planet to self-replicate and multiply, built with high-density DNA storage to remember their terraforming instructions. 1 gram of DNA can store 215 petabytes of information. Similar to cells and bacteria, the number of robots increases exponentially when left unmonitored. Spacecrafts now have biobag chambers on board, artificial wombs filled with amniotic fluid, fully supporting the entire development of a human fetus. On Earth, animals such as lambs are born the same way. Outside of the solar system, a spacecraft approaches a spherical passage. It is a wormhole, also known as an Einstein-Rosen bridge, created by an incredibly dense supermassive object opening a hole in space. It would be like putting a bowling ball on a trampoline, but the bowling ball is so dense and heavy that it keeps pulling the middle of the trampoline down. When it touches the ground, it is like touching another part of the universe. The astronauts on board the spacecraft are studying how to make the wormhole stable, as they are known for collapsing almost immediately after their formation. If the astronauts can find a way to fill the wormhole with exotic matter, the passage could remain open long enough for the spacecraft to pass through. The advanced multi-planetary civilization of humanity begins discussing whether there is a need for placing a megastructure close to the Sun. It would be called a Shkadov thruster, a stellar engine. It is a megastructure similar to a huge parabolic mirror placed close to the Sun's pole, used to propel an entire star system. The mirror reflects most of the Sun's light back at it, creating forward thrust. This means that the Sun and all of the planets, moons, asteroids, and human-made space structures in the solar system can be guided along a path chosen by humans, ensuring the safety of the solar system and turning humanity into a stellar civilization.